That's all we need.
Hello and welcome to another edition of the Tigers Down Under. I'm your host Alex, and with me again this week we've got Dan. How are you, Dan?
Yeah, look, I'm all right. I think we were sort of saying last week that we didn't have the highest of hopes for the Sunderland game, but we'd take a point, or if we nabbed all three in a bit of a hit and run sort of incident, then it'd be probably be a bit of a positive injection at the right time of the season.
Yeah, I think we were sort of saying last week, you look at that run of games against, what was it, Burnley, Norwich, Sunderland, and if you think coming out of it, we've got 4 points, you can't be unhappy with that. I think I'd sort of said last week, putting my most optimistic of optimistic hats on, that with Sunderland losing to Leeds and then our away form being what it was sort of, there was that sliver of hope that we could get something against Sunderland. And I think thinking about it, the other thing that we were talking about was the fact that the results seem to have fluctuated 1-0, 1-0, 1-0, 1-0 from last season to this season. So if anything, it's actually gone to form in that sense with us getting the 1-0 victory here. But yeah, look, I think can't be unhappy with that performance. And I think the main thing as well for me is the defensive solidity we're showing now, particularly in these away games, the way that apart from one or two, minor nervy moments late in this game, there wasn't really too much to feel threatened by from Sunderland. And I think it was Matt Crooks during the week was interviewed for the Hull Daily Mail, where he sort of said, you embrace the pressure that a relegation battle brings, because that's sort of what you play football for, that pressure, that the big crowds, the high stakes games, everything like that. And, to come through it, we sort of talked last week, when it comes to the relegation 6-pointers, we seem to, can almost pencil in a loss in those because we just don't seem to cope with the pressure. So it's a really positive sign to see City seemingly becoming more resilient in the face of this sort of pressure.
Yeah, obviously I didn't actually get to watch it, but I think obviously I watched sort of the highlights, so I've seen I think I've seen about 5 minutes of the game in bits and pieces. And it seemed like the impression that was given by that, and admittedly it is a very small sample size out of the 90 minutes of the game, but the impression I got was that general play, we seem to be moving the ball quicker, we seem to be linking up more fluidly, and we seem to be, I think, attacking a lot better than kind of perhaps the previous couple of games, or I think, the majority of that Norwich game, where I thought, apart from the first 20 minutes where we were quite bright, we sort of faded off for the rest of that and let Norwich get back into it. But it seemed like we played, from limited stuff. I'm sure you'll be able to correct me if I'm wrong here, but it seemed like we had Sunderland under a fair bit of pressure, and we were playing some really nice football, I think, throughout the 90 minutes, and not just for a 10-minute spell here or a 10-minute spell there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think the first, I want to say maybe 5-10 minutes were very, maybe it's a bit extreme to say reminiscent of the Coventry game, where we did feel very much backs to the walls and Sunderland had all of the play. But I think once we settled into the game, and I think it sort of showed at the start of the highlights package, where we were able to pass the ball around quite well, retaining possession in the Sunderland half. And, occasionally we'd lose the ball. They'd sort of win the ball back through their pressing, but then we were able to win it back off them and sort of keep that pressure on them, which led to a few really good opportunities. I think the highlights showed obviously the goal itself, but it didn't have a really good chance that Crooks had in the first half, where the ball gets played through I think it's a series of passes through the midfield, and the ball gets played through to him basically on his own in the Sunderland box, and really should be taking a shot there and testing the keeper. But I think he's sort of trying to overplay it and passes it to Joseph to take a shot, which, look, in the moment, who knows, whether you're thinking maybe Joseph's in a better spot, but he's got two defenders on him. You're thinking maybe Joseph hasn't scored. He wants to set him up for a good chance to get an opportunity to score a goal. Or he's just sort of, I don't know, overthinking it a bit. But if Crook scores there, potentially it's 2-0, and you're thinking it's a completely different game. And of course, Crooks has that really, really fantastic backheel chance in the second half that gets ruled out for offside. So I think you're right. Like, it's not as if we scored and then, as we do in the home games, it's not as if we then went, crap, we just got to, park the bus essentially. I think we did still continue to show a threat, which was a real positive. And I think, probably bodes well that the Cardiff game's away from home as well. But I think if we can start to take this mentality and attitude into home games, like I say, I think it should really bode well for us pulling away from this relegation battle.
Yeah, I think I hadn't really paid too much attention to Sunderland's form, their home form particularly, but it blew my mind that they hadn't lost at home.
Yeah, I didn't realize that. Yeah.
At all until the aftermath is at the end. The list of teams to beat Sunderland, the Stadium of Light. It's a very short list. So yeah, I think those moments, I guess, like similar to what was the other big one recently? Leeds, maybe? Was it Leeds game? Was 2-2, or what have we had with Leeds?
The Leeds game when we were 3-1 down and went back to 3-3, or
I think that was one where I was like, that was again really, group potentially gave us some confidence, and then obviously the big win over Sheffield United. So there's been sort of in between some of these probably more disappointing results. Yeah, but all the away games have been sensational. I mean, you're not wrong when you put it like that. But I think,
Leeds was at home, to be fair. But yeah.
It's been
Could we just play all our games away? Just
we should do though. What did Rosini? What did we try with? We tried.
The away kit at home. Yeah.
What the away kit at home? We could try. Surely we'll put the
go stay at a hotel in like Beverly or something. Coach in for the game.
Put the home fans at the other end or something, just like switching around. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I think those, I think if you got one of those results where you win one game against top six, you go, yeah, look, that was a good result, but it's a bit it's a bit of a fluke or whatever. But I think the fact that we sort of punctuated our season with a few of these really significant performances against some really top teams maybe doesn't help us out right now. It doesn't necessarily have a huge impact on this season, apart from obviously some points helping us avoid relegation. But I think in the long term,
saying I was going to ask, you know what? I reckon their grounds were in better condition than ours as well. If we
it might give the MKM a good rest too. Get plenty of time to get all the bad spirits or whatever it is out of there. But I think moving the positive benefits of some of these results, I think, are kind of more long term. Where you go, Sayers, we can see that he's a manager that can get results against the big teams in the division. Where it's not like he's only picking up points against the worst teams in the comp. He's picking up results against everyone, and in general, obviously our defense has, as you sort of mentioned and we've talked about recently, has improved significantly, and those I think those are all really positive signs that we're moving in the right direction. And now it's just a couple of those things, getting back-to-back wins, home wins, some of those sorts of little things that will just, I think, are kind of the next step in our progression and evolution.
Yeah, because I was just going to have a look talking there about home form. I think I heard the stat, and I just want to make sure that it is right before I quote it, that our home form, let's look just at home form. No, I don't know if this is right. I don't know why it's saying where, because it's form, not full season. But I think our home form is something like so bad. Let's go league. So bad that it's here we go. So we've taken 13 points at home for the full season. So it's easily the worst in the division. The next worst in 23rd is Cardiff. They've taken 8 more points at home than us. We are 8 points clear at the bottom of the home form table. You just think if we had even close to mid-table home form, we'd be almost challenging for a playoff place. It's absolutely wild just how bad we are at home and how good we seem to be. Like you say, it's not like we've beaten Sunderland and it's it's a shock, fluke result. And you go, well, we've also beaten Sheffield United. We've beaten Blackburn, 3 teams in the top 6. it's befuddling that we can be so different away from at home.
Yeah, and I think I mean it's the tale of the last few seasons, really. Like even last season, you get like had we been able to arrest the horrible home form, we make the playoffs easily. And this season again, if we could fix that home form issue, we're well clear of where we are at the moment, but we just can't seem to find a way to win at home. Luckily, I'm not at home this week against Cardiff, so.
Yeah, we're 8th in the away table, which is just mind blowing. Just as a final word on the game itself, so a couple of injuries in the game. Louis Barry going off injured, jarred his knee on the ground. I think more so because of the fact we've had 2 ACL injuries already than necessarily the nature of the injury. I think people were sort of worried it was an ACL. Which, look, I don't think we've got the results back on it yet, so we can't say anything for sure. It didn't look to me as a very much a not trained doctor. It didn't look to me like the sort of injury for an ACL. Like, it's not like he planted his foot and there was a change of direction or anything like that. It was just, I think he's just jarred it. So it could still be ligaments, which would still be bad. Like, that could still be 4 to 6 weeks, which would just about rule him out, which would be really unfortunate. But fingers crossed, it's just like a jarring and he's just out for a week or so. I think Hughes went off in the second half. It was really fortuitous because I think we were making a double sub. We were taking Joseph and I want to say someone else off. I can't remember who it was now, but it was basically we're making a double substitution that didn't involve Hughes, and then Hughes went down like a minute or so later and got subbed off, but it got included in that batch of subs, which then meant we could make another substitute later in the game, which was good. But I think Hughes was more just blowing after coming back from his hamstring injury. So he just came off as a precaution is what it sounds like. So fingers crossed he's all fine. I thought he was terrific, in his first game back. Like his distribution with the ball at feet is fantastic, and it just makes us so much more dynamic when you've got him sort of pinging the ball up to Gelhardt and Barry on the wings. Was great to see. But then, after writing him off last week, myself writing him off last week, Lincoln, the forgotten man, did actually make an appearance and actually looked really good. I think we saw on the highlights a couple of things he did, but in particular, that through ball where he sort of holds it up, and then releases Gelhardt into a 4-on-2 was really good play. And you don't want to, make or break a player off one substitute appearance, but it was a really promising start for him.
Yeah, I think you guys, I woke up in the morning afterwards and saw there was he'd made the appearance, and that it was all seemed pretty positive comments. And then, it seemed like, some nice moments that are shown in the highlights. So hopefully, I mean, I guess it's just one of those things. If he's there and we know he can do that, then it's just another sort of, I guess, like another option we got, another string to the bow sort of thing. So I think as many options as we have, and I guess like almost in that you want a little bit of diversity in style of play as well. So you've got sort of options, horses for courses. So if hopefully in the coming games, there's a time where Sayers can go, this is a game that needs someone like Lincoln to come in, or this is a game that needs someone like Kamara to come off the bench or whatever. And we can then go and be sort of picking and choosing, which for a while we didn't really have that option. It was just sort of, we threw on whoever we had. And I fully recognize that this kind of goes against almost everything we said last week, where we said, did we just bring in like too many players for the sake of having players? But, it's football.
Yeah, that's right. A lot can change in a week, can't it? Look, I think I said last week I was convinced we wouldn't see Lincoln at all, and first opportunity, and he's proved me wrong. But that's just how it goes. On the goal itself, Gelhardt putting a great ball in from the corner, and clearly something that we focused on before the game, because he tries it again a couple of minutes later and almost makes it 2 from 2, which is pretty crazy to see. But look, the perils of watching on a 20-second delayed stream or whatever it is, there's a small window of opportunity to spoil yourself. And I thought, as I was sitting there at 0-0, just have a look at the live table, because I think Derby were playing at the same time. And I thought, I just want to see, what does the draw do for us? Like how and Cardiff are playing as well. I was like, where does it put us in the table? And I'm like, why is it saying City are 1-0 up? That's strange. That must be an error. And then sure enough, about 20 seconds later, we put the ball in. So I did spoil it for myself, which was unfortunate. But, it's about as scrappy as they can come, but you take them all.
Yeah, I think the two deliveries, particularly those two corner deliveries that I saw on the highlights were, well measured, I guess, is probably the best way to put them. They were put pretty much in the perfect area, especially that the first one with it's just at the front post, just over a defender. Like it just made it really, really difficult for Patterson.
Who's do you think? Is it the defender? It's Roberts it's got to be Roberts. Like if your keeper's coming, surely I'm presuming Patterson said something to claim it, and the player's just gotten in his way.
Yeah. I don't know. I really don't I guess. Yeah. The assumption is that Patterson surely has called in some way, in which case, sure, it has to be the defender's fault for not heeding that call. But I think even in that situation, Patterson can be way stronger than he is. I've seen keepers, even my own keepers, they just take us out to get the ball, make sure it's clear. And he came pretty soft for that ball. So I think, he could have come through with a nice strong punch or a nice strong hand and just played it safe or whatever, even if he was, I just think it was pretty rubbish keeping, to be honest, even with the interference from his own defender. Particularly when it was backed up a couple of minutes later, as you say, by almost getting, almost getting chipped from a corner. It's not great.
Yeah.
But I think. I was just going to say, I was just rolling back through the results this year, and we've got two home wins back takes us back to Cardiff. It's Millwall, home win against Millwall, and then Cardiff. So, chance to do the league double over someone this weekend, or not this weekend, in a couple of days.
Which is interesting. We always seem to be in good form against Cardiff. I think we've got a pretty decent winning record against them. But just quickly before we do the Cardiff game, I'll give my votes for this game. So interestingly, I had Coyle as my MVP. I know the official MVP was Matarazzo, and I think a lot were crediting his game. I thought he had a really terrific game. I didn't notice him quite as much as some did. I do wonder now if Sayers has sort of locked in that midfield three, because I thought they looked really effective as a combination, which sort of surprised me pre-game, because I thought with no Slater, no Puerta starting, who we did finally see off the bench again, talking about, only taking 7 days to be proven wrong about something. We did see Puerta off the bench. I did think that this wouldn't be a mobile enough middle three when you've got Alzate, Crooks, and Matarazzo as your three. But I thought Matarazzo actually really surprised me with his energy and his range of passing and recovery of the ball as well. I did give him the 2 votes. Coyle gave the 3. I thought he really quelled Lefebvre, who came into the game with a really big reputation and was actually, I don't know if he was hooked at halftime or if he was injured or whatever, but I'd like to think that he was hooked because Coyle had such a good game. Coyle was very lucky very, very late on that he didn't get a handball pinged against him, sort of similar to McLaughlin in the previous game. So we've gotten away with a few there, but no, I thought that was probably one of Coyle's better games of the last few months, really. He started the season pretty well, but had dropped off for a little bit there. And then Gelhardt, I gave the 1 vote to. I thought his delivery, his attacking play on the wing was really top notch. And I think he's if he wants to make the move permanent, I can't imagine there's much more he'd need to do to prove himself as a really capable option that we should be looking at in the summer.
Yeah, I think I don't know if I've necessarily. I guess I have been. I've been pleasantly surprised by, I guess, Gelhardt's output so quickly. I don't think he's played that much
No.
this season before he came to us, and he's already in with a couple of goals, and probably almost had another assist, except sort of with Crooks and sort of falling offside. Maybe it doesn't quite count as an assist because I think there's a couple of touches in between, but he's just been so really dynamic and really involved, and obviously good off good getting good delivery off corners, and just really positive. It's exactly what you want from a lone player to come in and be able to have an impact, and hopefully it is a try before we buy situation, and I'd be pretty happy at the moment to pursue him on a permanent in the summer as well.
Absolutely. All right. Well, we'll finish things off then. We'll talk Cardiff, who, as you said, we did beat 4-1 at the MCAM earlier in the season. So, rare opportunity to do a double over someone this season. I guess in terms of personnel, so Louis Barry, I would presume, is going to be missing for this one, depending on the severity of that knee injury. I look at it. I think you made the call last week, which is a really astute one around the striker, where it does seem like we're sort of rotating between Pedro and Joseph. So I guess it's Pedro's turn to step up to the plate for this one. And I think Kamara, who only missed the Sunderland game with illness, maybe is just the logical one to slot straight back in. Or maybe we throw Lincoln in from a start.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess it's an interesting one. I'm just looking at Cardiff's got one win in their last 5, and in there is also a 7-0 demolition at the hands of Leeds. There's 2 draws, admittedly, but not in great form. So I guess really I guess our form's probably not heaps better technically, but I think we've had a bit of a harder run than Derby, Portsmouth, Plymouth in their 5.
Yeah.
So I'd be pretty confident. I think we can go out and obviously get something. We just need to go there with the right attitude from the start, play the right football. I don't think it's really clear. I do think Pedro is probably the clear real. He's the one who is at the moment, and obviously he's been here longer, but the one who's there and scoring goals, and that seems to be more likely at the moment. I do kind of get the sense that for Joseph, it's just sort of one of those, once he gets one, I think he'll probably sort of, he could go on a run and get a few. I could still see him getting, I could see him getting half a dozen before the end of the season, really, which is only one sort of every other game. If he can just get one soon. And I think that would be reasonable if he could do that. But yeah, I'd probably see Pedro from this for this one. And then hopefully Hughes is fine, and as sort of touched on, and he can slot back in, because I think he's been something that's really been missing in that back line. It's really interesting that McLaughlin is still deputising at left back. It's like we've made him a new Greaves. He can play left back, centre back, he can do it all. He just needs to go on a big run up and score a goal off a corner or something.
Jacob wasn't even on the bench, so it didn't even seem like there was the prospect that he was going to come off at any point, which was interesting. Joseph's an interesting one, because I think he's one of those players who's playing. He sort of reminds me of Delap at the start of last season, in the sense that he's playing really well, but Delap got his goal against Norwich in the first game, and you saw that sort of, I think, for Delap himself, and then also for the supporters, goes, okay, he's got a goal, he's looking good. He's got that work rate, which is what you want. Whereas if Joseph had scored in I don't know, the Sheffield United game or something, we're all sitting there going, okay, he's playing well and he's got a goal. But because he hasn't got that goal, there's that sort of wait for that goal. So yeah, you hope, and especially as you said, the fixtures are easing up now. So hopefully he can get one in a game like this, and that can send him on his way.
Yeah, I think it's crazy because Matazo came in and scored on his first game. Yeah. Crooks came in and scored, or on their first full start, I think. Crooks did. Gelhardt got a goal or an assist or something in his first game. And it's pretty much Joseph that little bunch of of the young quality players that sort of came in who unfortunately just hasn't managed to have it all happen for him. But yeah, I think soon he'll get one. I could see him getting one off the bench really in this. Like if he comes on with 20 minutes to go at a tired Cardiff defence, I could see him being able to nab something here. But I probably don't foresee too many changes. It basically just on the, I guess, fitness depending on Hughes and Barry and I guess how they have actually pulled up from their from the previous game.
Yeah. When you look at the table, this game's absolutely massive because you look at the three below us and we are 3 points clear of the relegation zone with that game in hand, which is this Cardiff game. And you just think if one of Cardiff or us can win this game, it's definitely too early to say that they'd be safe, but it would mean that you'd have to really have a collapse or have a few results really go against you to be dragged back into it. Because you're essentially then we would be 6 points plus goal difference clear of the bottom three who really aren't picking up that many points, which, I mean, I say that and we say 7 days is a long time in football. Teams could suddenly pick up a couple of wins and it all changes again. But as things stand, this game seems like a pretty massive one for both teams, really, to kind of pull away from that bottom three and almost, I sort of look at it as like if we could overtake an Oxford or a Swansea or someone, you're almost safe just because those teams feel like they're already safe, as weird as that is to say. So, I think the fact that it's away, the fact that it's Cardiff, are factors that just sort of play into my head in terms of thinking that, yes, I'm confident that we can go there and really get a result. Sort of thinking like a 2-0, 3-0 sort of win over them and see how that goes.
Yeah, look, I'm real hopeful. There's a tiny niggle in the back of my mind that says these are the games that we have to win, and so it's the kind of game where we just stuff it up and like the Stoke game or something, where it's just we just give away a couple of cheap goals and then just can't quite.
Like if this was Plymouth instead of even if it was Plymouth, I'd actually feel or Luton, I'd feel less confident. It's because it's Cardiff and it's away where I'm like, yeah, I think. But like you say, there's always that nagging doubt. There's always that niggle that I'm just like, Danny's just saying in the chat as well with Joseph, feel like he's a long-term option. We'll see more production from him next season when he's had a full preseason. Not sure if Burstow and Kamara are in that category without wing depth, which I think is actually a really good point when you think look, it's interesting because Burstow was brought in as a striker, but he's now almost been shifted out as a winger. Kamara as well, I agree. I don't know if he'll have that same opportunity to develop, given we now have so many wingers on the books. But I think it's a great point with Joseph that he'd essentially be having that preseason and playing next season as our primary striker. I think I'd hope that there's not really that pressure on him to succeed this season and that he'll have, 6 to 8 months next season to really make a name for himself.
Yeah, I just really hope that he gets a goal. I think more just for himself, just to go, he can go even if he gets a couple, he goes into the off season going, cool, I scored in the championship. I know I can do it now. Just for that sort of ease of mind, because I think it is one of those things. The longer you go, regardless of he came in January, people start going, oh well, he's played 30 games now and he hasn't scored a goal. He's played X amount of games and he hasn't scored a goal. And then they, everyone wants to pile on his back and, and
that's right. And that's why I think for someone like Delap, off the back of 2 bad loan spells, scoring in that first game against Norwich made such a difference. And that's, I completely agree. Like if Joseph can get a goal, even against a Cardiff or someone, it will make such a difference for him. But what's your score prediction for this one before we sign off?
I'm going to go with a nice tidy 2-0 victory. I think you're right. There's lots of positive factors that lead into this. I think we should be pretty confident after a good result and a good win against Sunderland. We're away from home. We're going against a team that's in pretty average form, and I just think I think this is a game where I kind of feel like Sayers is kind of getting them to work with that pressure a little bit. I think if we can get this win, then as you sort of mentioned before, it's very significant. So I'm confident and hopeful of 3 points.
Yeah, Danny's saying 3-0. Let's bury them. I completely agree.
Let's give them another 7-0 flog, and
yes, absolutely. It would be
they'll
lovely.
be afraid of Yorkshire every time they come.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, look, thank you for joining me for this one, Dan.
That's all right.
And thank you everyone for listening in. We will be back this time next week to talk Cardiff and look ahead to almost an equally massive game against Plymouth this time next week. So I've got a couple of pretty important 6-pointers coming up. But yes, until then, come on, City.